6 years ago, the Pew Research Center released a report with a surprising statistic. They discovered that for the first time, women were the sole or primary breadwinners in 40% of households with kids under 18. 40%. When I first heard this, I thought, wow, we are really making progress. I assumed that this paradigm shift in the breadwinner model had to be the result of women becoming more financially independent, that the gender wage gap must be closing. Then I took a closer look. It turns out that nearly 2/3 of those breadwinners were single moms, and their median income was $23,000 a year, right around the national poverty line. Now the rest were wives who out-earned their husband, but it seemed like that was more the result of the recession than of any major progress we'd made on the gender wage gap front. It had hardly budged. Men lost more than 5.4 million jobs in the wake of the Great Recession, more than double the number that women did. Some of those jobs disappeared. Others were replaced with lower-paying ones. And so millions of wives suddenly found themselves carrying the financial burden. It seemed like a lot of the women who were in these breadwinner roles had never planned to be there at all. And in fact, when I started talking to some of them, they all told me different variations of this. I never expected to be financially responsible for a family. I didn't plan for this. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I knew how they felt. My dad had been the sole breadwinner for most of my childhood, and when my parents divorced, my mom remarried and my stepdad became the primary breadwinner. So even though my mom went back to work, what I observed and absorbed was that women could have a career, but men were the providers. So when I started my working life with a degree in journalism from Syracuse and grand ambitions for my career, but I had no real understanding or expectation of being able to provide for myself financially for the long term, much less provide for anyone else. Why would I? I thought it wasn't supposed to be like that. So fast forward 10 years, and I'm renting a small one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn with my husband and toddler. By this point, I thought we'd have a place of our own and one that was big enough to accommodate the second child that we both wanted. Instead, we were sharing our only bedroom, which also served as a home office, with our 18-month-old son, Zachary. One night, Zachary woke up wailing, and I jumped up out of the bed. I picked him up out of the crib, and I was rocking him and pacing back and forth in our bedroom when it suddenly hit me. If something didn't change, we would soon be sharing this bedroom with a preschooler. And then what? A grade schooler? It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought I'd done everything I was supposed to. I'd worked hard in school. I got good grades. I had a successful career as a journalist with decent benefits and a steady paycheck. I was covering nearly half the bills. I had a small 401k. I even had my own emergency savings account with a couple $100s in it. I thought I was doing okay, and because I did, like a lot of women, I hadn't started seriously saving or investing for my future. I'd let my credit card debt creep up into the thousands. I was still paying it off, and I'd never bothered to negotiate my salary. Something I would deeply regret a few months later when I found out that someone had been hired in a role similar to mine, and they were making nearly 50% more than me. And I'd been at this magazine for more than 6 years, so you can imagine the money I missed out on. The craziest part was that I was actually covering personal finance for the magazine at the time, so if anyone should have known better, it was me. But what I realized that night was that every choice I'd made with my money was based on 3 assumptions: that I'd get married, that my husband would earn more than me, and that he'd take care of most of this stuff, just as my dad had. So even though I was earning almost as much as my husband was at this point, I'd been clinging to this belief that he would be the one to get the raise or the better paying job so we could afford a place of our own and a second child. Now, obviously that hadn't happened yet, But rather than ask what more I could do, I realized I was starting to resent my husband for it. And as I started talking to other women, my coworkers, my friends, whether they were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, or beyond, it became clear that I wasn't alone in my assumptions. Even though women have a higher chance of being the breadwinner now than ever before, most of us still aren't being brought up to think like one, or to make the kinds of choices that will set us up to be truly independent. Now we know, and research shows, that it's not because women aren't capable of earning more, managing their money, and investing it wisely. It's because we still aren't expected to. And you can see the results of that all around. Did you know that single women in this country have, on average, less than 1/3 the wealth that single men do? Less than 1/3. And the gap is even bigger for women of color. Now, that's partly because we still earn, on average, about 20% less than men do. But we also invest less and later. Men's retirement account balances are, on average, 50% higher than women's. Yet women live 5 to 6 years longer than men. So we're living longer, but we're saving and investing less. That's some scary math. And it's one reason why women who are 65 or older are 80% more likely than men to live in poverty. Yes, we still have no formal financial education in this country, so all of us could be better prepared financially. But we know that parents talk differently to their daughters about money than they do to their sons. Research backs this up. What are parents most likely to talk to their girls about? How to open a checking account, how to budget and track their spending. What are they more likely to talk to their sons about? How to build credit, manage taxes, how to invest. Even the advice we get as adults is often different. The research firm AgeWave analyzed the money coverage in the April 2018 issue of the top women's magazines. Out of nearly 1,600 editorial pages, you can bet there were hundreds of pages about beauty and fashion and how to lose 10 pounds and how to get the attention of that guy in the office. But guess how many pages covered personal finance advice? 5. 5 pages out of 1,600. And even when women's publications give money advice, it's often very different than the advice aimed at men. Starling, a British bank, did an actual linguistic analysis of 300 money articles that came out over the last 2 years. Guess what they found? 90% of money articles aimed at women suggested spending less, while the majority of articles aimed at men focused on investing and building wealth. Even today, we're still teaching women to be budgeters, while men are taught to be breadwinners. You don't think that messaging makes a difference? And it starts young. One Girl Scout survey found that nearly half of girls between the ages of 11 and 17 felt uncomfortable making financial decisions on their own. Only 12% thought they would feel very confident making decisions about money as adults. And those numbers don't improve much when we do become adults. A recent survey found 2/3 of women between the ages of 18 and 29 thought financial planning was, and I quote, too difficult to even think about. I'll admit, I used to feel that way. But that night, pacing back and forth in our bedroom with our son in my arms, I realized just being quietly resentful of my husband probably wasn't going to get me any closer to the future that I wanted. And that future, a home of our own in the city we loved, another baby, it felt like it was starting to slip away. Now, I hadn't been raised to think like a breadwinner, but it didn't mean I couldn't start now. And here's what I began to understand. It's not enough to just cover the bills and pay down debt. It's more than that. The breadwinner mentality isn't, how am I going to have enough money to cover the repairs to the broken dishwasher? It's, how am I going to have enough money to cover the next 10, 20, 30 years? It's not about bills. It's about building wealth. It's not about stretching every paycheck. It's about taking some of every single paycheck and putting it to work for you by saving and investing it for your future. It's about knowing that you can take care of yourself now and in the future, not expecting anyone else to take care of you. And when I got that, really got what was at stake, I started to make different choices. I applied for a job in management I wouldn't have gone for before, and I got it. I negotiated a better salary, and you can bet I've negotiated every single job offer and raise I've gotten since. Within 3 years, I'd saved enough money to put down most of the down payment on our 2-bedroom home in Brooklyn. I was 5 months pregnant with our second son when we moved in. I taught myself how to invest, and I put as much money as I could into my 401k and our other investment accounts. And as my net worth went from negative to positive and continued to grow, so did my sense of confidence and security. We talk a lot about female empowerment these days, and we should. But I can tell you, there is nothing more empowering than being able to bring the future you want to life, and to know that you have the savings and the wherewithal to walk away from any situation that you don't want. Imagine if we started shifting the way we thought about breadwinners. If we started raising everyone to think like a breadwinner, and we gave them the tools to be successful. We might finally close the gender wage and wealth gaps in this country. It may be the only way that ever happens. But just as importantly, it would allow each of us to have control over our own financial destiny without depending on anyone else to make it happen. Thank you.